Welcome to Inside Vietnam. I'm your host, and today's story comes from Declan Murphy, a 61-year-old electrician from Dublin who spent 3 decades running his own business, dealing with dodgy contractors, spotting inflated invoices from across a job site. He thought that experience made him sharp enough to see through anything. He heard all the warnings about romance scams in Vietnam, nodded knowingly at the expat meetups, told himself he was too clever for that sort of thing. What he didn't realize was that sometimes the best cons don't look like cons at all. They look like genuine connection. They know exactly what a lonely man needs to hear. This is the story of how Declan thought he was playing it smart, acting like a dumb foreigner to catch someone in a lie, only to discover he'd been the dumb foreigner all along. Here's his story, in his own words. Right, so, my name's Declan Murphy, and I suppose I should start with who I was before all this, because that matters, doesn't it? Understanding how far you've fallen and all that. For 18 years, I ran Murphy Electrical Contractors in Dublin, proper operation, that was. 3 lads on the books, me name on the side of 2 vans, contracts ranging from housing estates to commercial fit-outs. I was the type of sparky who'd show up to jobs in work boots, worn just right, not too new but not falling apart either. Knew every other electrician in the city, could get materials at trade prices, had a reputation for showing up on time, and not taking the piss with invoices. That meant something, you know? Having your name means something. My wife, Mary, died in 2016. Cancer. 4 months from diagnosis to gone. The work became everything after that. Easier to focus on junction boxes and circuit breakers than think about the empty house. Our 2 daughters were grown by then. Sarah up in Cork with her own family, Emma down in London doing something with marketing I never quite understood. They'd call on Sundays, but you could hear them getting on with their lives in the background, children needing things, partners asking questions. I was the weekly obligation, the box to tick. So I worked, took on more contracts, built the business up proper. By 2019, I was doing well enough to think about maybe taking on a 4th lad, expanding the operation. Had nearly 60 grand in savings, the vans were paid off, tools were all sorted. Thought I had another decade in me easy, then maybe sell the business, retire comfortable. Then 2020 happened. Not the pandemic, though that didn't help. No, my trouble was a massive commercial client went belly up owing me €47,000. €47,000. They'd been doing a shopping center renovation, 6 months of work, and I'd fronted the materials costs like always, figuring they were good for it. Big company, been around for years. Then one morning I'm reading the paper with my coffee, and there they are in the business section, administration, creditors queuing up, not a prayer of getting paid. The dominoes fell fast after that. Couldn't pay my crew their wages that Friday. Had to let 2 of them go by Monday. Word spread the way it does in Dublin. Everyone knows everyone, and suddenly 2 other contracts I'd been counting on went to different firms. Clients get nervous when they hear you're having cash flow problems, don't they? Start thinking maybe their project won't get finished. Maybe their deposit isn't safe. I burned through my savings trying to keep it afloat. Took out a loan against the house. Sold 1 van, then the other. By the time I finally admitted it was over, I was 58 years old, with nothing to show for 3 decades of work, except a pile of tools I couldn't bear to look at, and €85,000 from selling everything off. The shame of it was worse than the money. Dublin's not a big city, not really. Not when you've lived there your whole life. Couldn't go to the pub without running into someone who knew, someone who'd give you that look, the sympathetic head tilt. Ah, Declan, rough business that. Every street corner reminded me of jobs I'd done, projects I'd been proud of. The housing estate in Drumcondra where I'd rewired 40 units. The restaurant and Temple Bar where I'd done all the kitchen electrics. Even just walking past electrical supply shops where I used to get trade discount, where they knew me by name. I'd lie awake at 3 in the morning doing sums in my head. 85 grand sounds like a lot until you realize you're 58 with no business. No income beyond a small state pension that wouldn't kick in proper for years, and no idea how to start over. The thought of getting a job working for someone else, taking orders from some young lad running a firm half as well as I'd run mine, made me want to put my head through a wall. My daughters tried to help, bless them, but that made it worse somehow. Sarah invited me up to Cork for Sunday dinners, but I could see her husband watching me, wondering if I'd need money, if I'd become a burden. Emma sent job listings from London, entry-level electrical work, as if I was starting fresh at 58. Neither of them said it, but I knew what they were thinking. Dawes lost it. Can't take care of himself anymore. Then one day I'm scrolling through Facebook, avoiding doing anything productive, and I see posts from Mick O'Brien, a lad I used to play rugby with back in the day. He'd retired to Vietnam a couple years prior. There he is in the photos, sitting on a beach in Da Nang, pint in hand, sunshine everywhere, pretty Vietnamese girls in the background smiling at the camera. The captions were all about how cheap everything was, how far his pension stretched, how he'd rented a nice apartment for a fraction of what a bedsit in Dublin cost. I started researching, told myself it was just curiosity, something to do. But the numbers kept drawing me back. Cost of living in Da Nang was maybe a quarter of Dublin. My 85 grand plus pension would let me live comfortable there, not just scraping by. Visa was straightforward enough, big expat community, English widely spoken in the tourist areas. Weather was better, food was cheap, beer was cheap, rent was cheap. But here's the thing, right? I kept telling myself it was practical. That's the word I used. Practical financial decision. Stretching my money further. But if I'm being honest, and I suppose that's the point of all this, the real reason was simpler. I needed to be somewhere nobody knew about Murphy Electrical Contractors going under. Somewhere I could be Declan the Irish fella instead of Declan, who lost everything. Somewhere the shame couldn't follow me because nobody knew there was anything to be ashamed of. I didn't tell my daughters the full plan until 2 weeks before I left. Just mentioned I was thinking of traveling a bit, maybe Southeast Asia for a few months. They were supportive in that worried way children are when their aging parent does something unexpected. Emma asked if I was sure I'd be okay alone. Sarah asked if I'd thought it through properly. I told them I had, which was a lie. I'd thought about the logistics, but not about what I was really doing, which was running. Sold most of what was left. Furniture, Mary's things. The first had been keeping for no reason. Books, the lot. Packed one suitcase. On a gray February morning in 2022, I took a taxi to Dublin Airport, carrying everything I thought I'd need for my new life. €85,000 in my bank account, a one-way ticket to Da Nang, and a powerful need to stop being the man I'd become. The flight was long, plenty of time to think, which was dangerous, kept second-guessing the whole thing. What was I doing? Running away to Asia at 61 like some character in a bad film? But then I'd think about Dublin, about the looks, about eating Sunday dinner with Sarah while her husband barely talked to me, about lying awake calculating how many years my money would last. At least in Vietnam, I'd have enough. At least there, I could breathe without feeling like the air was full of judgment. When the plane touched down in Da Nang, it was hot and humid and completely foreign. Walking through the airport, nothing made sense. The signs were in Vietnamese. People were shouting in a language I didn't understand, and for a moment, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I got in a taxi, and the driver spoke a bit of English, pointed out landmarks as we drove, and I saw the beach stretching out along the coast, and something in me relaxed. This was it. Fresh start. New life. Nobody here knew about the business collapse. Nobody here knew anything, except that I was Declan from Dublin, retired electrician, come to enjoy my pension in the sunshine. That version of me sounded fine. That version of me could work. I just needed to believe it myself. The first month in Da Nang was like learning to walk again. Everything was backwards. The traffic alone nearly killed me 3 times that first week. Motorbikes everywhere, hundreds of them, flowing like water around pedestrians. You couldn't wait for a gap because there was no gap. You just had to step into the stream and trust they'd go around you. Took me a fortnight to work up the courage. I'd found a serviced apartment near Thuong Beach through one of those expat websites. Nothing fancy, but clean. About $400 a month, which would have got you a cupboard in Dublin. Had air conditioning that rattled like it was angry. Tiny balcony where I could watch the street below, and a bed that was harder than any surface I'd slept on in 61 years. That's what did my shoulder in eventually, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The relief of anonymity hit me straight away. Nobody here knew me. Nobody cared. I'd walk down to the beach in the mornings, get a coffee from one of the little cafes for about 50 cents, and just sit there watching the sea. The Vietnamese coffee was strong, sweet, came with condensed milk that settled at the bottom. Had to stir it proper, or you'd get a mouthful of syrup at the end. I'd make that one coffee last an hour sometimes, just existing without the weight of people's expectations or pity. Joined a few expat Facebook groups. Vietnam, expats Da Nang expat community, that sort of thing. Everyone on there was reinventing themselves, in one way or another. Posted an introduction, Declan Murphy, Dublin, retired electrician, just arrived, looking to meet people. Got dozens of welcomes, invitations to meetups, recommendations for everything from where to buy Western groceries to which visa agents weren't complete crooks. Started attending the Thursday expat meetups at a bar called the Shamrock, which was run by an Australian fella named Bruce. Ironic name, that. Place was full of older Western men, most of them living on pensions, most of them with stories they didn't quite tell straight. I'd introduce myself as Declan from Dublin, retired electrician, enjoying the weather. Never mentioned the business collapse. Nobody asked too many questions. That was the unspoken rule, I think. We were all running from something. The warnings started almost immediately. First meetup, Tommy, a Brit from Manchester who'd been in Vietnam 5 years, pulled me aside after a few beers, told me to watch myself with Vietnamese women. Said there were romance scams everywhere, massage parlor girls running long games, bar girls with sick buffaloes that always needed money. Professional girlfriends, he called them. Said they'd spot a new foreign man from a kilometer away, play the long game, bleed you dry while making you think it was love. I nodded along, acting like I appreciated the concern. But inside I was thinking, I ran a business for 30 years, dealt with contractors trying to inflate invoices, subbies doing dodgy work, clients making excuses about payments. I could spot someone trying to pull a fast one. These other fellas might fall for it, but not me. I was too smart for that. Looking back now, that's when I should have been most worried. The moment you think you're too clever to be fooled, the shoulder pain started around month 3. That rock-hard mattress combined with the humidity and sleeping in strange positions from the heat, right shoulder, down into my upper back, made it hard to sleep, which I was already struggling with anyway. Mentioned it at a meetup, and an American fella named Dave recommended Healing Hands Spa on Tranfu Street. Said it was legitimate, proper massage place, not one of the dodgy joints with neon lights and girls in short skirts hanging around outside. I'd seen those places. They were obvious enough. But Healing Hands looked different. Professional signage, clean front window, price list in English and Vietnamese displayed clearly. Looked like the sort of place Mary might have gone to back in Dublin if we'd had the money for that sort of thing. Walked in on a Tuesday afternoon. Cool inside, air conditioning working properly, smell of incense and eucalyptus oil, soft music playing, something instrumental in Vietnamese. A woman at the front desk, older, maybe 50, greeted me in broken English. I pointed at my shoulder, made a pained face, and she nodded, understanding immediately. Led me to a back room, told me to wait. That's when Lynn walked in. She was 34, I learned later, but could have passed for younger. Slim, wearing simple black pants and a white shirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail. Had this warm smile that reached her eyes, not the professional smile you see on people in service jobs. She said hello in English, surprisingly clear English, and asked where the pain was. I pointed to my shoulder. She touched it gently, professionally, pressing around the area, asking if this hurt, if that hurt. Her hands were small but strong. Then she did something that surprised me. She explained what she was finding. Said the muscles were very tight, probably from stress or poor sleeping position. That she'd focus on releasing the tension in my upper trapezius and levator scapulae. Used the proper terms for the muscles. Explained pressure points. Asked if I'd prefer firm or gentle pressure. Most places I'd been to, they'd just start rubbing without a word. During the massage, which was brilliant, actually worked on the knots properly. She asked about me. Where was I from? Ireland, I told her. Ah, Ireland, she said, and started telling me about watching Irish landscape videos on YouTube to practice English. That's how she learned, she said. YouTube videos, no formal classes, couldn't afford them, but she'd studied traditional medicine for 2 years before running out of money. This was her way of using what she'd learned. I found myself telling her about Dublin, not about the business collapse, just general things. The rain, the pubs, how different the weather was here. She laughed at my descriptions, seemed genuinely interested, asked questions that showed she was actually listening. What did Irish people eat? Was the sea cold? Did I miss the green fields? The hour went by fast. When she finished, my shoulder felt better than it had in weeks. I paid at the front, left a decent tip, and walked out thinking that was good value for money. $15, about €12. Back in Dublin, that wouldn't get you a cup of coffee and a sandwich. I went back the following Tuesday. Asked for Lynn specifically. The woman at the desk smiled like she'd expected that. Led me to the same room. Lynn came in, remembered my name without checking any notes. Asked how my shoulder had been since last time. We talked more during that session. She asked about my daughters, which I'd mentioned the previous week. Remembered that Sarah was in Cork, that Emma worked in marketing. Small details, but they stuck with me. When you're alone most of the time, having someone remember details about your life feels like something. I started going twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. The shoulder was fine after the third session, but I kept going anyway. Told myself it was preventative, keeping the muscles loose, but really I was going for the conversation. Lynn would ask about my week. I'd tell her about the expat meetups, learning to cross the street without dying, trying new Vietnamese food. She'd laugh at my stories, tell me about her life, had family in the countryside, send money home when she could, dreamed of opening her own wellness center someday, combining traditional Vietnamese massage with modern techniques. Mentioned she'd never been outside Vietnam, that Ireland sounded like a fairy tale country. I'd leave those sessions feeling lighter. Not just physically, but in a way I hadn't felt since Mary died. Like someone saw me as something other than a failure or a burden or a weekly phone call obligation. 6 weeks in, after a Friday session, I did something impulsive. As she was walking me out to the front desk, I asked if she'd like to get coffee sometime. Not as a client, just as, a coffee. She stopped walking, looked surprised, genuinely surprised. Her cheeks went a bit pink, which I hadn't expected. She said, "Coffee? With me?" Like she couldn't quite believe I was asking. I almost backed out right then, thinking maybe I'd misread the whole thing. Maybe the friendliness was just professional courtesy, and I was being that foreign guy who mistakes kindness for interest. But then she smiled, different from her professional smile, and said okay. Yes. She'd like that. She finished work at 6 on Saturday, if that worked. I walked home that evening feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not since the early days with Mary, probably. That nervous excitement in your stomach. That sense of possibility. The beach looked prettier, the motorbike seemed less chaotic, even the humid air felt pleasant instead of oppressive. Sat on my little balcony that night with a beer from the corner shop, watching the street below, thinking maybe this was what a fresh start actually looked like. Not just running from shame, but actually building something new, finding connection again. Being seen as Declan the person, not Declan the failure. I texted Sarah that night, told her I was settling in, well, making friends, enjoying the weather, didn't mention Lynn, wasn't sure what to say yet, didn't want to jinx it. But for the first time since landing in Da Nang, I felt like maybe I'd made the right choice coming here. Maybe Vietnam was exactly what I needed. That first coffee date, I spent an hour getting ready. Stood in front of the mirror trying to decide what to wear. Ended up in jeans and a clean shirt, nothing fancy. Felt ridiculous, 61 years old and nervous as a teenager. Met her at a cafe she suggested near My Cay Beach, one of the local places, not touristy. She was already there when I arrived, wearing a simple yellow dress, hair down instead of in the ponytail. Smiled when she saw me, stood up to greet me properly. We talked for 3 hours. About everything and nothing. She asked more about Ireland, about my life before Vietnam. I told her about the business. Carefully edited version. Said I'd retired after my wife passed. Wanted a change of scenery. She told me about growing up in the countryside, moving to Da Nang for work, sending money home to help her parents. Her dreams of finishing her traditional medicine studies someday. Maybe opening that wellness center. The way she talked about it, you could see it mattered to her. Wasn't just chat, When the bill came, I reached for it. She tried to stop me, said we should split it. I insisted, but she genuinely seemed uncomfortable taking, so we compromised. She'd pay next time. That stuck with me. Next time. Like she wanted there to be a next time. Walking her to her motorbike afterwards, she touched my arm while laughing at something I'd said about trying to eat pho without making a mess of myself. Just a light touch, nothing forward, but it made my heart do something stupid. She said she'd had a lovely time, that it was nice talking to someone who actually listened. Most men just talk about themselves, she said. I thought about all the expat meetups I'd been to, all the men going on about their glory days, and reckoned she had a point. There was a next time. And another. We fell into a pattern over the next couple months. Coffee dates, walks along the beach, dinners at local pho shops, where she'd teach me how to order properly, what herbs to add, how to squeeze the lime just right. She showed me the real Da Nang, places tourists didn't know about. Little banh mi stalls where they knew her by name, coffee shops tucked down alleys, the best spot to watch sunset over the Dragon Bridge. And here's what got me. What made me trust her more than I should have. She never asked for anything. All those warnings Tommy and the other lads had given me about Vietnamese women with their hands out, sob stories about sick relatives, always needing money for something. Lynn never did that. Never mentioned money troubles, never hinted at needing help. When I'd try to pay for everything, she'd protest. Weakly, sure, but she'd protest. insist on covering her share sometimes. Made me feel like she was interested in me, not my wallet. I'd spent 30 years in business dealing with people trying to get one over on me. Contractors inflating quotes, subbies cutting corners, clients making excuses about delayed payments. I knew how to spot someone working an angle. And Lynn? She didn't have an angle. That's what I thought anyway. At the expat meetups, which I still attended on Thursdays, I started mentioning her. Casual like. My girlfriend Lynn, I'd say, watching to see if anyone raised an eyebrow. A couple of the lads gave me looks, but I'd cut them off before they could start. It's not like those situations you hear about, I'd say. She's different. Has her own life, her own money, doesn't ask me for anything. And I believed it. Believed I was smarter than the other foreign men who fell for scams. Believed I'd found something genuine. The financial involvement started so naturally I'd barely noticed it happening. We'd go for dinner, I'd cover it, $20, $30, $40, nothing major. She'd protest, I'd insist, she'd thank me gracefully. Normal relationship stuff, right? What's the point of having money if you can't treat someone you care about? Then Tet was coming, Vietnamese New Year. She mentioned wanting to buy a nice áo dai, the traditional dress, to wear for family celebrations. Showed me photos of the one she liked. $85, about €70. I bought it for her without thinking twice. When I gave it to her, she cried. Actually cried. Said it was too much, she couldn't accept it, but I insisted. Told her I wanted to do it, wanted her to have something nice. She hugged me tight, said I was too kind, that she didn't deserve someone like me. Should have wondered why she said that, shouldn't I? Didn't deserve someone like me. Her motorbike broke down in early June. She mentioned it in passing, said she'd have to save up for the repairs, might take a while. $120. I offered to cover it immediately. She refused at first, proper refused, said she couldn't take money from me like that. But I pressed, said, what's money good for if not helping people you care about? She agreed finally, promised she'd pay me back. I told her not to worry about it. She never did pay it back, but that seemed fair enough. We were together, weren't we? What's mine is yours and all that. Running total at that point was maybe $600 over 2 months. Felt like normal relationship expenses to me. Less than I'd spend taking Mary out back in Dublin. And Lynn seemed so grateful for everything. Made me feel good, useful, like I was taking care of someone again, instead of just being the sad old man living alone in a foreign country. We started getting physical around then, holding hands when we walked, kissing goodnight after dates. Nothing heavy, she always had boundaries. Said she lived with family, Vietnamese culture was different, needed to take things slow. I respected that. Didn't want to be the typical Western guy expecting too much too fast, you know. She'd kiss me goodbye, touch my face gentle-like, and I'd go home feeling 20 years younger. She started talking about the future. Our future. Maybe someday opening that wellness center she'd always dreamed of, combining traditional Vietnamese massage with modern techniques. She'd run the treatment side, I could handle the business and electrical setup. My expertise would be valuable, she said. Made me feel like I had something to offer beyond my bank account, like we were building something together. Then came the first real test, about 5 months in. We were having coffee near the beach, and she seemed distracted. I asked what was wrong. She hesitated, said it was nothing, family stuff, didn't want to burden me. But I pressed, told her she could talk to me. So she told me. Her mother needed a medical procedure. Nothing serious, she was quick to say. But the public hospital wait times were terrible. Could be months. Private clinic could do it within a week for $800. She was clearly stressed about it. Kept saying she was trying to save money, maybe borrow from friends. She'd figure it out. Never once directly asked me for help. That's what got me. She wasn't asking. Wasn't that what all the warnings were about? Girls asking for money? Lynn wasn't asking. So I offered. Immediately. Told her I'd cover it, not to worry about it. She refused. Proper refused. Said she couldn't accept that much. It was too much. We'd only been seeing each other a few months. But I insisted. I remember my exact words. What's money good for if not helping people you care about? Your mother needs treatment. Let me do this. She cried then. Really cried. Not just tears, but proper sobbing. Hugged me tight in that coffee shop. Thanking me over and over. Saying she'd pay me back. She promised she'd pay every bit back. I told her family came first, never to worry about money with me. She looked at me with these eyes full of gratitude and something else. Something that looked like love, and said I was the kindest man she'd ever known. Walking home that day, I felt like a hero. Like I'd done something genuinely good. help someone I cared about, solve the real problem. At the next Thursday meetup, I mentioned it to a couple of the lads, tried to be casual about it, but I was proud. My girlfriend's mother needed medical care, helped her out, I said. That's what you do in it, take care of the people you love. One of them, Dave the American, gave me a look, started to say something, then stopped himself. Just nodded, said that was good of me. But I caught the look. The one that said he'd heard this story before, that it didn't end well. I bristled inside. He didn't know Lynn, didn't know our situation. This was different. That's what I kept telling myself. This is different. She's different. I'm not like those other foreign men who get taken advantage of. I've run a business. I know people. I'd spot a con. The money was in her account within 2 days. She sent me a photo of her mother at the clinic, thanked me again, said this changed everything for her family. I looked at that photo, tried to tell if it was real or stock. Hated myself for even thinking that way. This is what happened when you listen to paranoid expats too much. You started seeing scams everywhere. Looking back now, that was the moment. That was when I crossed from casual dating into something else. $800 might not sound like much, but it wasn't about the amount. It was about what it represented. I was invested now. Financially, emotionally, all of it. And once you're invested, pulling back feels like admitting you were wrong. Feels like giving up on something real. I wasn't ready to admit I might be wrong. Wasn't ready to give up on the first thing that had made me feel alive since Mary died. Since the business collapsed, since I'd become just another lonely expat running from his failures. So I kept going, kept believing, kept telling myself I was smart enough to know the difference between love and con. That's the thing about being conned, innit? You don't know you're being conned. You think you're in love. 2 weeks after the medical money, Lynn called me crying. I was at home, middle of the afternoon, thought maybe something had happened with her mother. But no, her younger brother's motorbike had been stolen, right off the street where he'd parked it near his work. He delivered food for one of those apps, Grab or something similar, needed the bike for his income. Without it, he couldn't work. She was devastated, felt responsible for not warning him to park it somewhere safer. $450 for a used replacement. I didn't even hesitate. Told her I'd transfer it that evening. This time she insisted it was a loan, proper loan, said she'd pay me back monthly. $50 a month, she'd have it sorted in no time. I appreciated the gesture but told her not to worry about it. We'd work it out later. She seemed adamant though. Said it mattered to her that she wasn't just taking from me. She never made a payment. There was always a reason. Her mother's recovery expenses were more than expected. Her hours at the spa got reduced. The money was tight that month. I didn't press. What was I going to do? Chase her for $50 like some loan shark? We were building a life together. That's what I kept telling myself. The physical side of our relationship deepened around then. We'd been holding hands for weeks, kissing goodnight after dates, but it never went further. She always had reasons. Lived with her family, Vietnamese culture was different. Wasn't ready yet. I respected that. Told myself to be patient, not be the typical Western bloke expecting too much too fast. She'd kiss me goodbye, soft and sweet, touch my face gentle-like, and I'd go home feeling 20 years younger. That was enough. She started talking more about our future. Not just vague dreams, but actual plans. Maybe in a year or two, we could open that wellness center she'd always wanted. Combine traditional Vietnamese massage with modern techniques, a bit of acupuncture, maybe some herbal treatments. She'd handle the treatment side. I could manage the business operations and sort the electrical setup. My expertise would be valuable, she said. Made me feel like I had something to offer beyond my wallet, like I was building something again, had a purpose. Then in late July, everything changed. We were having dinner at a little Comtam place she liked, broken rice with grilled pork. She was quiet, picking at her food. I asked what was wrong. She tried to brush it off, said she was just tired, but I could tell it was more than that. Finally, she told me. The spa ownership was changing hands. The current owner was selling to someone new, and the new owner wanted to bring in his own staff. Lynn would lose her job. The regular clients she'd built up over 3 years, the income she relied on, gone. She was properly upset, not crying, but close. Said she'd start looking for work at other places, but good positions were hard to find. Most spas wanted younger girls, or girls willing to offer extra services, if you know what I mean. She wasn't interested in that. Wanted to keep doing proper therapeutic massage, not the dodgy stuff. Then she mentioned something else, almost casual-like, but I could tell it mattered. A former colleague, a woman named Mai, was selling her 50% stake in a small spa across town. Mai was moving to Hanoi with her husband, needed to sell quickly. It was a proper operation, licensed, good reputation, steady clients. If Lynn could buy in, she'd have guaranteed work, a share of the profits, and a foundation for maybe expanding later. For our wellness center dream, $6,500, that's what Mai wanted. Lynn showed me paperwork on her phone, all in Vietnamese. Could have been anything, really. Business license, lease agreement, financial statements, who knows? I couldn't read a word of it. She explained what each document was, pointed to numbers, tried to make it clear this was legitimate. But she was clearly torn. It was her dream, she said, but impossible financially. She'd never saved that much on her massage income, would probably just have to find another job somewhere and forget about the ownership dream. I sat there doing the math in my head. 6.5 grand. That was less than 10% of my total savings. And this wasn't charity, was it? This was an investment. In her future. In our future. She'd been hinting for weeks about us building something together, and here it was, the opportunity. The first step. I told her I'd do it. I'd give her the money. She refused. Flat out refused. Said it was too much, she couldn't accept it. What if the business failed? What if something went wrong? She couldn't take that kind of money from me. But I insisted, told her I knew businesses, ran one for 18 years. This was solid. A going concern with existing clients and revenue, much safer than starting from scratch. And besides, I said, we were building something here, weren't we? This was an investment in our future together. I offered $7,000, the extra $500 for supplies, first month's rent, whatever she needed to get properly established. She cried, properly cried, tears running down her face in that restaurant. Said I was too good to her, that she didn't know what she'd done to deserve someone like me. Promised this would change everything, that she'd make it work, that we'd build something amazing together. I wired the money the next day, $7,000 through a remittance service. About €6,000. Biggest single amount I'd sent anyone since buying the work vans back in Dublin. She was at the bank when it came through, sent me a photo of the receipt, thanking me over and over through text messages. Looking back now, that's when I should have known. That's when the alarm bells should have been deafening. But I didn't hear them, or I did, and ignored them. Because I wanted to believe. The cracks started appearing almost immediately. I asked when she'd be taking over at the new spa. She said soon, paperwork was being finalized. Asked where it was located, said I'd love to see the place. She was vague. Still working out details with Mai, would take me once everything was settled. I offered to look at the electrical setup, literally my area of expertise, make sure everything was up to code and safe. She deflected, not ready yet, maybe next week, didn't want to bother me with boring details. Next week became the week after. The week after became soon. The lease was being finalized. The business license was delayed. Vietnamese bureaucracy was slow, red tape everywhere. These things took time. I told myself she was probably right. I didn't know how business worked in Vietnam. Maybe it was all slower here, more complicated. But part of me noticed. Part of me kept a tally of the excuses, the delays, the vague answers. Our relationship shifted too. She started canceling dates last minute. Her mother needed her. She wasn't feeling well. The stress of the business transition was overwhelming. When we did see each other, she seemed distracted, always checking her phone. The physical intimacy we'd been building stalled completely. She'd still kiss me goodbye, but it felt different. Perfunctory. Like she was going through the motions. I'd go home to my apartment after seeing her, lie awake in the humid darkness, and wonder. Was I being paranoid? Was this normal relationship stress? Or was something wrong? At the Thursday expat meetup, I found myself getting defensive when anyone mentioned romance scams. Someone would tell a story about a mate who got taken for thousands by a bar girl, and I'd bristle inside. That's not my situation, I'd think. Lynn's different. She has a real job, real dreams. We're building something together. This isn't like those stories. I'd excuse myself early, not wanting to hear any more warnings that might plant doubt. The worst part was 500 already crossed a line, and I knew it. $7,000. Add the 800 for her mother's medical, the 450 for her brother's bike, the 600 in dinners and gifts. I was in for nearly 9 grand, more than 10% of everything I had in the world. At 2 in the morning one night, unable to sleep, I sat on my balcony with a calculator. Went through every transaction, every transfer, $9,400, about 8,000 euro. That was 4 months of comfortable living in Vietnam, or nearly a year if I tightened up. But more than that, it was the point of no return. Pull back now, and I was admitting I'd been played, that all those warnings were right, that I was just another thick foreign bloke who thought he was too smart to get conned. I couldn't admit that. Not to myself, not to the expat community, not to my daughters who already thought I'd lost my edge. So I kept believing, kept telling myself Lynn was stressed about the business, that Vietnamese culture was different, that family obligations came first here, that I was being paranoid because of the business collapse back in Dublin. The business collapse. That's what my mind kept circling back to. How I'd missed the signs there too. The clients' delayed payments, their vague explanations, the way they'd avoided my calls. I told myself they were just having cash flow problems, that they'd sort it out, that I shouldn't worry. Right up until they declared bankruptcy, owing me 47,000 euro. Was I doing the same thing now? Missing obvious signs because I wanted to believe everything was fine? I texted Lynn, hope everything's going well with the spa setup. Let me know if you need anything. She replied an hour later, thank you. Very complicated paperwork, but moving forward. We'll tell you soon. I stared at that message in the dark. Moving forward. We'll tell you soon. The same kind of non-answers the client in Dublin used to give me. But what was I going to do? Demand proof? Accuse her of lying? That would make me the paranoid foreign boyfriend who doesn't trust his girlfriend, doesn't understand Vietnamese culture, thinks every woman here is running a scam. So I did nothing. Just sat there in the humid night, listening to motorbikes pass below, feeling that knot in my stomach get tighter and hoping I was wrong about everything. Month 8, September. The hottest month I'd experienced in Da Nang, humid air that stuck to your skin like a wet towel. I was sleeping worse than ever, waking up at 3-4 in the morning, sheets soaked through. Lynn called me one morning, voice breaking. Her father had fallen critically ill. Lung problems from years of smoking, she said. He was in hospital. Bills mounting. She sent me photos later that day. An older man in a hospital bed, tubes and monitors, lips sick enough. I stared at those photos trying to work out if they were real or pulled from somewhere online. Hated myself for even thinking that way. $1,200 needed immediately for treatment. More coming, she said. Her voice on the phone was frantic in a way I hadn't heard before. Said she was so sorry, knew she'd already taken too much from me, but her family had nobody else to turn to. Her brother could barely cover his own expenses. Her mother was still dealing with her own health issues from earlier in the year. I did the math in my head. With this, I'd be in for nearly $10,000. $10,000. That's more than 11% of my total savings. More than a year of comfortable living in Vietnam. I felt that knot in my stomach again, tighter this time, almost painful. But what was I supposed to do? Tell her no? Let her father suffer because I was having doubts? Pull back now and prove I was just another foreign man who loses interest when things get difficult. That would destroy whatever we had. And if I was wrong about my suspicions, if this was all legitimate, I'd never forgive myself. I sent the money, $1,200, about 1,000 euro, told her not to worry, family came first. We'd get through this together. She thanked me through tears, said I was saving her father's life, that she'd never forget this kindness. But I started lying awake at night, doing the sums over and over. $9,770 total, nearly 10 grand. The calculator on my phone became my late-night companion, adding up every transaction, every transfer, watching the number grow. The relationship shifted after that. Properly shifted, Lynn started canceling dates more frequently. Her father's condition, exhausted from worry, picking up extra shifts to help with hospital bills. When we did manage to meet, she seemed distant, always checking her phone, distracted, apologizing, but not really present. The physical side of our relationship, which had been slowly building towards something more, stalled completely. We'd still kiss goodbye after our brief meetings, but it felt mechanical. She'd always have a reason she couldn't stay longer, couldn't come over, couldn't spend proper time together. Vietnamese culture, family obligations, not feeling well, too tired from work and worry. The spa still hadn't materialized. 2 months since I'd wired that $7,000, and nothing. She'd show me more paperwork sometimes, all in Vietnamese, talk about complications with the business license, promise it was happening soon, just taking longer than expected. Vietnamese bureaucracy was impossible, she'd say. So much red tape, so many delays. Then Tommy showed me something at a Thursday meetup I'd forced myself to attend. He pulled me aside, showed me his phone, a dating app, one of the popular ones. There was Lynn's profile, or someone who looked exactly like her. Same face, same smile, different name. Lynn, 32, looking for serious relationship. My stomach dropped. 32. She'd told me she was 34. Small thing, maybe, but it stuck in my head. I confronted her about it the next time we met, gentle as I could, showed her the screenshot Tommy had sent me. She seemed mortified, covered her mouth with her hand, shook her head, said it was an old profile from before we met, that she'd forgotten her login details, couldn't delete it, would contact the company directly to remove it. Seemed genuinely embarrassed, upset that I'd seen it, worried what I must think of her. I wanted to believe her, told her it was fine, these things happen, no big deal. But Tommy pulled me aside later that week. "Mate," he said, "I hate to say this, but I've seen this exact pattern before. The family emergencies, the business opportunity, now the sick father. It's textbook." I bristled, defended Lynn, said he didn't understand our situation. Stopped hanging out with Tommy after that. Easier than hearing what he might say next. But I started noticing other things. Small inconsistencies in her stories that I'd let slide before, but now stuck in my mind like splinters. Her father had smoked for 30 years, she'd said once. Then it was 20 years. Then on and off throughout his life. Her brother was 28. Then suddenly he was 26. The spa lease was almost finalized, for 3 weeks straight without ever quite being finalized. When I tried to pin down details, ask specific questions, she'd get emotional. "Why don't you trust me?" she'd ask. "I thought you understood. Vietnamese culture is different. Family is everything here. You Westerners don't understand how we have to take care of our parents." Made me feel guilty for doubting her. Like I was being the ignorant foreigner who didn't understand how things worked here. I was sleeping maybe 3-4 hours a night, second-guessing every conversation we'd ever had, replaying moments in my head, looking for signs I'd missed. That knot in my stomach was permanent now, always there, tightening whenever I thought about the money, about Lynn, about what might be happening. The thing is, I'd been here before. Different country, different situation, but the same feeling. The business collapse in Dublin. I'd missed warning signs there too. The commercial client who owed me €47,000, how their payments started coming late, week late, then 2 weeks, then a month. Their excuses got vaguer. "Cash flow issues, mate. You know how it is. Big payment coming in next week. We'll settle up then." I'd believed them because I wanted to believe them. Because admitting they might not pay meant admitting I'd made a massive mistake fronting all those materials. Was I doing it again? Missing obvious signs because I was desperate to believe everything was fine? I sat on my balcony one night at 2 in the morning, humid air pressing down, motorbikes still buzzing past on the street below even at that hour. Had my phone out, calculator app open, going through the numbers again. $9,770. Tried to remember what my daw used to say about being careful, about trust. "Deck, the day you think you're too clever to be fooled is the day someone's already after fooling you." I'd thought I was too clever. Thought 30 years of running a business made me sharp enough to spot any con. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe my judgment had been broken since Dublin. Maybe the business failure had damaged something fundamental in how I read situations, how I trusted people. Or maybe I'd always been this way. Maybe I'd just gotten lucky for 30 years, and now the luck had run out. My phone buzzed. Text from Lynn. "Father doing little better today. Thank you for everything. Don't know what I would do without you." I stared at that message. Don't know what I would do without you. Without me? Or without my money? Was there even a difference anymore? I texted back. "Glad to hear he's improving. Let me know if you need anything." Immediately regretted it. Let me know if you need anything. Why did I keep saying that? Why did I keep offering before she even asked? But I knew why. Because if I pulled back now, if I stopped helping, it would mean admitting the whole thing might be a scam. And I couldn't admit that. Not yet. The cost of being wrong was too high. Not just the money I'd already sent, but the humiliation. The proof that I was exactly the thick expat everyone had warned me about. So I did nothing. Just sat there in the dark, feeling that knot pull tighter, hoping I was paranoid, hoping Vietnamese culture really was just this different, hoping Lynn was telling the truth and I was the problem for doubting her. But hope was getting harder to hold on to. I hit a breaking point in late September. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours a night, lost my appetite, found myself snapping at the woman at my regular coffee spot for no reason. Apologized immediately, felt like shite about it. But I couldn't keep going like this. The not knowing was eating me alive. I needed the truth. whatever it was. Even if the truth meant I'd been played for a fool. Even if it meant losing Lynn. At least I'd know. At least I could stop lying awake doing sums, stop second-guessing every word she'd ever said to me. So I decided on a strategy. Lean into the dumb foreigner stereotype. Play naive. Act like the clueless Western bloke who doesn't understand how things work in Vietnam. Get concrete proof, one way or another. If I was wrong, I'd apologize. Work on my trust issues, maybe see a therapist. If I was right, well, at least I'd know. I called Lynn, put on my cheeriest voice, told her I'd been thinking. The spa should be ready soon, right? I wanted to surprise her by visiting the location myself, maybe bring flowers for the grand opening, take some photos to send to my daughters. Show them their old da was building something meaningful, make them proud. She hesitated, could hear it in the pause, then said, of course, that would be lovely, but she wasn't sure if it was ready for visitors yet. Still some work being done, I pressed gently. Just want to see the place, I said. Don't need it to be perfect. Just excited to see where we're building our future. Could she write down the address for me? Another pause. Then she said she'd text it to me. I told her no, I was old-fashioned, liked having things written down. Humor me? She laughed, a bit forced, and said sure, next time we met. We met 2 days later at a cafe. She seemed nervous, kept checking her phone. When I asked for the address again, she pulled out a napkin, scribbled something quickly, pushed it across the table. I pocketed it with a smile, thanked her, kissed her cheek, didn't let on that my heart was hammering. That evening, I contacted Tony. British bloke, been in Vietnam 10 years, married to a Vietnamese woman, spoke the language fluently. We'd met at a few expat gatherings, seemed like a solid fella. I explained the situation, showed him the napkin. He gave me a look. The kind of look that said he'd heard this story before and knew how it ended. You want me to come with you? He asked. Check it out properly? I did. We went the next morning. The address was in a residential area off Nguyen Van Lin. Tony drove his motorbike. I rode on the back, clutching his shoulders probably too tight. Found the building. It was apartments. Just apartments. No commercial space, no shop fronts, nothing. Tony spoke to the building manager, a middle-aged woman sweeping the entrance. They had a conversation in Vietnamese, while I stood there understanding nothing. He showed her the address, asked about a spa, about anyone named Lynn. She checked some kind of ledger, shook her head, kept talking. Tony nodded, thanked her, turned back to me. No business license filed for this address, he said. No Lynn registered as a resident, no recent commercial lease applications. She says this building is purely residential, has been for 15 years. I stood there in the morning heat, sweat running down my back, feeling everything shift. The ground felt unsteady. You all right, mate? Tony asked. I nodded, told him there was one more place we needed to go. We drove to Healing Hand Spa on Tran Phu Street, the place where this all started, where I'd met Lynn 9 months ago with my sore shoulder and my stupid hope that Vietnam would be different from Dublin. My hands were shaking as we walked in. Part of me still hoped there'd be an explanation. Maybe she'd written the wrong address. Maybe the spa was registered under a different name, different location. Maybe. The same older woman was at the front desk. She recognized me, smiled, started to speak. Tony said something in Vietnamese, gestured toward the treatment rooms. She led us back. And there was Lynn, working. Regular shift. Giving a massage to another foreign man. Older bloke, looked German maybe. She had her hands on his shoulders, was saying something to him in English, laughing. Professional laugh. The same one I'd fallen for. She looked up, saw me. Her face went through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds. Shock. Then calculation. Then resignation. Like she knew it was over and almost felt relieved. Tony spoke to her in Vietnamese. Gestured to a back room. She said something to the German bloke, apologized, said she'd be right back. Followed us. The 3 of us stood in a small storage room that smelled of eucalyptus oil and incense. Tony explained who he was, that he was translating. Asked if she wanted to tell me the truth, or should he start asking questions. She didn't deny anything. That's what struck me. Once cornered, she didn't even try to keep up the story. It was almost like she'd been waiting for this moment, carrying the weight of it, and now she could finally put it down. Her father was dead. Had been dead 7 years. Before we even met, no younger brother. She was an only child. The medical procedure was real, but it was for her boyfriend's mother, her boyfriend. In Hanoi. Name was Tuan. Had gambling debts with dangerous people. She'd been sending him money for 2 years to keep him safe, to keep him alive. The spa investment never existed. The paperwork I'd seen was fake, printed from a template she'd found online. There was no business opportunity, no future wellness center we'd build together. Tony kept translating, his voice steady while mine was stuck in my throat. She worked at 3 different massage parlors, he said, used different names at each. Lynn here, Mai at another place, Hoa at a third. Ran the same pattern with multiple foreign men. Same stories. Sick relatives, business opportunities, family emergencies. She'd been doing it for 2 years. Had sent over $40,000 to Tuan total. She spoke directly then, looking at me. Tony translated. Foreign men come to Vietnam looking for young Vietnamese girlfriends, she said. Why shouldn't I benefit? My boyfriend would be killed without the money. I had no choice. I finally found my voice, asked the only question that mattered. Was any of it real? She looked at the floor, wouldn't meet my eyes, spoke quietly. Tony translated. You were always kind. That was real. I waited. She kept talking, Tony kept translating. Most of the foreign men treated her like a purchase, she said. Like they'd bought access to a pretty Vietnamese girl. But I was different, actually listened. Remembered things, seemed to care about her as a person, not just a fantasy. It made it harder, she said. I couldn't tell if even that was manipulation. Probably was. Probably everything was. I asked about the other men. She was vague. Tony pressed in Vietnamese, firmer now. She admitted there were 4 others currently. An Australian in Hoi An, another Irishman, which stung like a knife. An American who visited every few months, and the German I'd seen her massaging when we walked in. Different amounts from each. Different stories. Some had given more than me, some less. I wasn't special. I was just another mark in the rotation. I stood up, told Tony we were leaving. My legs felt weak, but I made them work. Lynn asked something in Vietnamese. Tony translated. She wants to know if you're going to report her to the police. I looked at her. This woman I'd thought I was building a life with. Who I'd imagined growing old with in Vietnam, opening that wellness center, finally having purpose again. I don't know, I said. Meant it. Didn't know anything anymore. She looked relieved. She knew the police wouldn't care much about a foreign man's relationship troubles anyway. Civil matter. Sort it out yourselves. As we left, I glanced back. She was already wiping her eyes, composing herself. Probably had another client scheduled. Another lonely foreign man who'd pay good money for a massage and believe her when she said he was different from all the others. Tony and I walked to a bar a few streets over. Didn't speak the whole way. He ordered us 2 beers without asking. Pushed one across to me. Sorry, mate, he said. I nodded. Took a long drink. Tasted like nothing. The strangest part was, one didn't feel angry. Thought I would. Thought there'd be rage, betrayal, all of that. But there was just emptiness. Like someone had scooped something out of me and left the hollow space where hope used to be. Tony stayed with me for a couple hours. Didn't push me to talk. Just sat there while I worked through it, drinking slowly, watching the street outside. Eventually I thanked him, told him I needed to be alone. He made me promise I wouldn't do anything stupid. I promised. Walked back to my apartment in the fading light. Motorbikes buzzing past, cooking smells from street vendors, Da Nang going about its evening like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I'd come to Vietnam to escape being Declan, who lost the business. And now, I was Declan, who got scammed by a massage girl. The thick Irish fella who thought he was too clever to fall for the oldest tricks in the book. Sat on my balcony that night, humid air pressing down, and did the final tally, $9,070, nearly 10 grand. About 8,000 euro. Not enough to ruin me, but enough to hurt. And the worst part, one, still didn't know what was real. Would never know. That laugh when I told her about the job site disasters back in Dublin, was that genuine? That touch on my arm walking along the beach, did she feel anything? The kiss after our 4th date that made me feel 16 again, was she feeling anything at all, or just ticking boxes on a mental checklist? I'd played the dumb foreigner at the end, thinking I was being clever. But I'd been the dumb foreigner the whole time, just too proud to admit it. The financial damage was $9,770, nearly 10 grand. About 8,000 euro. That's what I lost in cold hard numbers. Not enough to ruin me, I've still got most of my savings, but enough to sting. Enough to hurt every time I think about it. That's nearly 4 months of comfortable living in Vietnam. Or a full year if I'd been more careful with my money. But here's the thing, the money isn't what kills me. Not really. It's the humiliation. I'd spent 30 years running a business, 30 years dealing with dodgy contractors, spotting inflated invoices from across a job site, knowing when someone was trying to pull a fast one. I'd prided myself on being sharp, street smart, able to read people. And I fell for the oldest tricks in the book: sick relative, business opportunity, family emergency, classic cons, every single one of them. I'm 61 years old, ran a business, dealt with dodgy characters my whole life, and I got played like a complete amateur. I made the mistake of telling my daughters, sent them an email about a week after everything fell apart, tried to frame it as a learning experience, said I just wanted them to hear it from me before they heard it from someone else. Tried to sound like I had it under control, like I was handling it fine. The responses came within hours. Sarah first, then Emma. Both concerned, both kind, both unmistakably pitying. That's what got me. The pity. Sarah offered to wire me money. I declined, mortified. Emma suggested I come home, start fresh in Dublin, like I was a child who'd made a mess and needed his parents to clean it up. Both emails confirmed my worst fear. The dynamic had shifted. I wasn't the capable father anymore. I was the lonely old man who got scammed in Asia. Someone who needed protecting, someone who couldn't take care of himself. I stopped going to the Thursday expat meetups. Couldn't face the lads I'd bragged to about Lynn, the ones I'd told, it's not like those situations you hear about. She's different. They'd been right. I'd been wrong. Simple as that. Tommy texted a few times. No judgment, mate. Happens to the best of us. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. What would I say? You were right. I was thick. Thanks for trying to warn me. My routine became solitary. I take my meals alone now, different places each time. Avoiding anywhere I went with Lynn. Walk the beach in the early mornings when it's empty, before the tourists and the vendors set up. The heat and humidity don't bother me as much anymore. You get used to it. I ignore friendly smiles from service staff now. Every interaction feels loaded with suspicion. Did that girl at the coffee shop linger too long when taking my order? Is she being nice or sizing me up? Is the woman at the laundromat asking about my day because she's friendly or because she thinks I'm another lonely foreign man with money? The worst part, and one thought about this a lot over the past year, is the uncertainty about what was real. I'll never know. That's what keeps me up at night, not the money, the not knowing. When she laughed at my stories about the job sites back in Dublin, was any of that genuine? When she touched my arm while we walked along my key beach, was she feeling anything? That kiss goodnight after our fourth date, when I felt 16 again, nervous and hopeful, was she feeling anything at all? Or was she just running through a mental checklist, ticking boxes, playing a role? I'll never know. And that's worse than knowing it was all fake. At least then it would be clean. At least then I could file it away as a con, pure and simple. But now I've got all these moments replaying in my head, wondering which ones were real and which ones were performance. Maybe both of us were performing. Me playing the lonely Irish electrician looking for connection. Her playing the sweet Vietnamese girl who needed help. Neither of us real. I think about the pattern of misjudgment, how I missed the warning signs in Dublin when that commercial client started delaying payments. Convinced myself they were just having cash flow problems, that they'd sorted out, right up until they declared bankruptcy. Missed the signs with Lynn too. The vague answers about the spa. The canceled dates. The convenient family emergencies that always needed money. All the inconsistencies in her stories that I noticed but explained away. Started wondering if the business collapse broke something in my ability to read situations. Or if I was always this way and just got lucky for 30 years. Maybe my judgment's been faulty all along, and I'm only now seeing it. But here's what I learned, right? All those years running a business, I thought I knew when someone was trying to pull a fast one. But the thing is, back in Dublin, I knew the game. I knew what contractors charged, what materials cost, what excuses meant what. In Vietnam, I didn't know the game, didn't speak the language, didn't understand the culture, couldn't tell the difference between normal Vietnamese family obligations and a con. And when you're lonely, when someone makes you feel like you're not a failure for the first time in years, you'll believe any story they tell you, because you want to believe you're still the man you used to be. Still capable, still sharp, still worth something. The scam wasn't complicated. Sick relative, business opportunity, family emergency. Oldest tricks in the world. But she was patient. Played the long game. Made me think I was clever for seeing through the obvious scams while walking straight into hers. I thought acting like a dumb foreigner at the end was me being smart, finally catching her out. But I'd been the dumb foreigner the whole time, just too proud to admit it. Maida used to say something when I was a young lad learning the trade. Dec, the day you think you're too clever to be fooled is the day someone's already after fooling you. Took me 61 years and 10 grand to understand what he meant. I'm still in Da Nang. Moving back to Dublin would feel like admitting complete defeat. And what would I return to? The same streets that reminded me of my business failure, except now I'd be carrying this failure too. At least here I'm anonymous in my shame. Nobody knows except the few expats I've told, and they've got their own problems. I've learned to live with loneliness. Accepted it might be permanent. Sometimes I see Lynn on the street. We don't acknowledge each other. Heard through the expat grapevine she's moved to Hoi An now, probably running the same play there. I wonder about those other men she mentioned. The Australian, the other Irishman, the American. Have any of them figured it out yet? Or are they still sending money, still believing in a future that doesn't exist? I came to Vietnam to escape being Declan, who lost the business. Became Declan, who got scammed by a massage girl. Suppose that's what you get for trying to outrun yourself. You just end up proving you were right to run. Declan Murphy is still living in Da Nang. He's since reconnected with some members of the expat community, found work doing electrical repairs for other foreigners. Small jobs, nothing major. Says he's not interested in dating anymore, probably won't be again. When I asked if he'd warn others going through something similar, he said, they wouldn't listen. I wouldn't have listened. Sometimes you need to pay the tuition to learn the lesson. Declan's story is one we hear variations of constantly here in Vietnam. The specific details change different professions, different amounts of money, different women, but the core pattern remains the same. Loneliness makes us vulnerable, hope makes us blind, and sometimes the person running the con is just better at the game than you ever realized you were playing. If you're thinking of pursuing romance in Vietnam, or anywhere abroad where language and cultural barriers make reading situations harder, remember this. Being smart in one country doesn't make you smart in all countries. The moment you think you're too clever to be fooled is exactly when you're most vulnerable. This has been Inside Vietnam. If you found this story valuable, hit subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're living in Vietnam with your own story to share, we're listening. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and remember, not every smile means what you think it means.